Forget everything you think you know about vampires. Before the seductive counts in candlelit castles, before cinema made immortality romantic, there was a man who left thousands of people writhing on sharpened stakes. A ruler whose enemies marched into a landscape of screaming corpses and turned back in pure terror. This is the real story behind Dracula, and it begins not with a bite, but with a prince named Vlad the Impaler, a man who made his weapon his empire. Stay with me, because by the end, you'll understand why the vampire myth might just be the softened, more palatable version of the truth. The year is 1431. In the cold, forested shadows of Transylvania, a child is born into a world of political chaos. His father, Vlad II, joins a militant brotherhood sworn to crush the expanding Ottoman threat, the Order of the Dragon. Because of this, the family name becomes Dracula, meaning the dragon. The son, therefore, is Dracula, son of the dragon. But this boy's education isn't in books or diplomacy. As a political hostage in the Ottoman court, young Vlad witnesses torture as a routine part of life. He sees prisoners mutilated, enemies broken down slowly and deliberately. Mercy is a sign of weakness. He learns one lesson above all others. If you cannot outnumber your enemies, you must out-terrify them. This single, brutal lesson would come to define a reign soaked in blood. When Vlad finally returned to rule his homeland of Wallachia, he didn't just punish criminals, he made them into public spectacles. His chosen method, impaling, was not a quick execution. It was a deliberate, agonizing performance. A long wooden stake was driven through the body, carefully avoiding vital organs to ensure the victim remained conscious for hours, sometimes even days. Imagine the soundscape of his kingdom, the wind moving through fields of dying men, the creaking of wood under human weight, and the low, exhausted moans that slowly faded into an eerie silence. Vlad arranged these bodies in geometric formations outside his cities. It was choreography. It was a message carved in human flesh. Enter my lands, and this is your future. In 1462, the Ottoman Sultan Mehmed II advanced on Wallachia with an army estimated in the tens of thousands. Vlad knew he couldn't meet them in an open battle, so he waged a war of attrition and terror. He poisoned wells, burnt crops, and left entire villages empty, creating a wasteland for the invading army. Then, under the cover of darkness, he led a daring night raid, slipping through enemy lines in an attempt to assassinate the Sultan himself. He failed to kill the Sultan, but what he did next was far more effective. As the Ottoman forces continued their march toward Vlad's capital, they stumbled upon something the chroniclers could only describe as a forest. But this forest wasn't made of trees. It was a field of 20,000 impaled bodies, the rotting corpses of captured soldiers and his own people, blackened by scavenging birds. The stench alone was so overwhelming that it purportedly forced the hardened Ottoman soldiers to cover their faces and fall back. They weren't defeated by swords or shields, but by pure, unadulterated psychological horror. That was Vlad's ultimate weapon, annihilation of the will to fight. So, did he actually drink blood? The truth is, there's no solid historical proof that Vlad ever consumed human blood. But at the time, printing presses were a new technology, and pamphlets filled with lurid details spread across Europe like wildfire. These early forms of propaganda described him dining amongst the fields of impaled victims, dipping his bread into bowls filled with their blood, as if savoring his dominance. Was this just exaggeration? Possibly, but horror doesn't need literal vampirism when reality itself has already crossed into the realm of nightmares. Centuries later, an Irish author named Bram Stoker was researching Eastern European folklore for his new novel. He stumbled across the name Dracula and the brutal legends attached to it. He borrowed the name, and in 1897, the Count Dracula we know was born. The historical warlord evolved into a supernatural predator. Fangs replaced stakes, and seduction replaced siege warfare. Cinema then took this new creation and ran with it, from the silent, shadowy figure of Nosferatu to the charismatic aristocrats of Universal and Hammer horror. But here's the unsettling truth. The fictional vampire drinks quietly in the dark. The real man killed in broad daylight for all the world to see. Vlad's brutality made him enemies everywhere. The local nobles, the boyars betrayed him. Foreign powers imprisoned him. He spent years locked away in a Hungarian prison. But even captivity couldn't erase his legend. He eventually returned to power, but only briefly. In 1476, he died in battle. The exact accounts vary. Some say he was ambushed, others that he was betrayed by his own men. His body was decapitated, and his severed head was sent to Constantinople, preserved in honey, as a trophy to prove that the monster was finally gone. But you can't kill a legend by removing a head, and legends, they evolve. So why does Dracula remain so popular today? I think it's because he embodies a kind of controlled monstrosity. He isn't a mindless beast. He is intelligent, strategic, and patient. Modern audiences don't just watch Dracula films for the scares or the blood. They watch for the fantasy of power, for the idea of immortality, for the vicarious thrill of dominating fear rather than being consumed by it. Every era reinvents Dracula as an aristocrat, a beast, a romantic anti-hero, but beneath every cape and every set of fangs, the same core truth remains. Picture it, a battlefield at dawn. The mist hangs low over the fields. Rows of bodies sway gently on their stakes in the morning wind, and at the center of it all stands Vlad, his armor stained, his face unreadable. There's no smile, no visible madness, only cold, hard calculation. For a split second, you understand something truly terrifying. He didn't see himself as evil. He saw himself as a survivor, a protector who believed absolute cruelty was the only path to saving his people. Dracula was never just a monster in a storybook. He was the long, dark shadow cast by a real man. And maybe that's why the story still grips us so tightly after all these centuries. Because the most horrifying truth isn't that vampires might exist. It's that history has already shown us that human beings do not need fangs or supernatural powers to become monsters. If you enjoy exploring the dark legends of history, subscribe to the channel and hit that like button. Let me know in the comments. Do you see Vlad the Impaler as a ruthless defender of his homeland, or something far worse? Because our next journey into the past might blur the line between history and nightmare even further. Thanks for watching.